Are you sure? That whisper in the forest. Was it really just the sound of the wind? Or was it a call from someone who is no longer alive? Everyone who enters the forest of Deadwood Hollow never comes back the same. Tonight, do you have the courage to listen until the very end? 'Cause sometimes it might be calling your name. In speech bubble, a chilling true story that grips the heart. Do not blink. Do not skip. Because in the end you will never forget what you hear. They went camping. Only one returned. The air smelled of pine and wet soil. The forest stretched endlessly, dark and silent, except for the crunch of boots on dry leaves. Four friends walked deeper into the woods. Ethan, Lara, Ben, and Marcus. They had driven 6 hours from the city, eager to escape noise, light, and people. The path was narrow, winding between thick trees that blocked the sun. Birds called in short bursts, then went silent as if warning them to turn back. They reached a clearing by dusk. A stream ran quietly nearby, and mist hovered above the water. Ethan set up the tent while Lara gathered firewood. Ben laughed loudly, his voice echoing through the trees. Marcus stared into the forest, his expression distant. He said he saw movement between the trees. Ethan brushed it off, probably a deer. But the forest had gone still. No crickets, no wind. Just a deep, heavy silence that pressed against their ears. When night came, the temperature dropped fast. They sat around the fire, telling stories, laughing to drown out the unease. Lara mentioned an old rumor about people who vanished in these woods. Ethan smirked and threw another log into the flames. Ben joked that maybe they were sitting right where those people had disappeared. Marcus did not laugh. He kept staring into the dark beyond the firelight. The flames flickered, and shadows shifted across the trees. Something moved out there, slow, deliberate. The laughter died. Ethan grabbed a flashlight and aimed it toward the sound. The beam hit nothing but trunks and fog. But the sound was closer now, like wet footsteps on leaves. Ben shouted, "Who's there?" No answer. Only the faint rustle of something circling them. Marcus stood up suddenly. He said he saw a figure. Watching. Ethan told him to sit down, but Marcus was already walking toward the trees. Lara called after him, her voice trembling. He disappeared into the fog. They waited. Minutes passed. No sound. No response. Then, a single scream tore through the forest. It was sharp and sudden, then cut off mid-breath. Ethan ran toward the sound, flashlight shaking in his hand. Lara and Ben followed. Branches clawed at their clothes. The mist thickened, swallowing the beam of light. They called Marcus's name again and again. Only the echo answered. Then the beam of Ethan's flashlight caught something. A torn piece of fabric, Marcus's jacket, hanging from a low branch. Beneath it, the ground was soaked. Not water, something darker. Ben gagged and stumbled back. Ethan stared, his chest tightening. Lara began to cry. They turned to run back toward the camp, but the path was gone. Every direction looked the same. Trees, mist, endless shadows. Then the forest whispered. Not in words, but in breaths. Soft human breaths. Too many. All around them. Lara screamed and sprinted into the fog. Ethan shouted for her to stop, but she vanished. Her scream came seconds later, high and desperate, then silence. Ben grabbed Ethan's arm, his voice shaking. "We have to move. Now." They stumbled through the dark, tripping over roots, gasping for air. The mist felt thicker now, heavy, choking. Ethan's flashlight flickered. For a second it caught something pale between the trees. Face. Not human. Eyes black and empty. Mouth open too wide, as if stretched by unseen hands. The light died. Ben cursed and tried to relight it. Something brushed past Ethan's shoulder. Cold. Wet. He turned, swinging his hand wildly through the air. Nothing. Then he heard Ben's breath hitch. He turned the light back on. Ben was gone. Only the echo of footsteps retreating into the dark. Ethan stood alone in the suffocating mist. His own breathing was the only sound left. He whispered their names. Laura. Marcus. Nothing answered. Then, from behind him, voice, low, familiar, said his name. He turned slowly. The beam of light trembled in his hand as it found a figure standing only a few feet away. It was Marcus, but his face was wrong. His eyes were black and shining, his mouth torn into a smile that stretched too far. His clothes were soaked, dripping with something that steamed in the cold air. Ethan stumbled backward, shaking his head. Marcus! The figure took a step forward. The smell hit him first, a mix of rot and metal. The voice spoke again, softer this time. Why did you leave me? Ethan turned and ran. He ran until his legs burned, until his lungs ached. Branches tore his arms, mud splashed his face. He did not stop until he saw the dim glow of a ranger cabin through the trees. He burst through the door, collapsed on the floor, gasping, shaking, drenched in sweat and rain. When the rangers found him the next morning, he could barely speak. They searched the forest for 3 days. No sign of the others, only the campsite empty. And in the ashes of the fire, something half-buried. Handprint. Burned into the ground. The handprint was blackened into the soil, deep enough to crack the earth beneath it. The rangers looked at one another in silence. Ethan sat nearby, wrapped in a blanket, his eyes wide and hollow. He whispered that the forest was not empty, that it was watching. They tried to question him, but his voice trembled too much to make sense. That night, they took him to the small clinic in town. He kept staring at the window as if expecting someone or something to appear behind the glass. The nurse shut the curtains. But even then he would not stop whispering. He said they were not gone. He said they were waiting for him to come back. By morning, his hands were bleeding, long scratches running up his arms as if he had tried to claw something off his skin. The doctors sedated him. He slept for hours, his body twitching. When he woke, he asked for a mirror. They gave him one. He stared at his reflection for a long time, then screamed until his voice broke. Because behind his shoulder, in the mirror's corner, was a faint outline of 3 figures. Standing, watching. The doctors said it was trauma, hallucinations. But the ranger who had found him went back into the forest 2 days later to look again. He never returned. When they searched his cabin, they found his boots at the doorstep, soaked in mud. And on the wooden floor inside, another blackened handprint, identical to the one at the campsite. Ethan stopped speaking after that. He refused food, refused light. He covered the windows of his room with blankets and muttered to himself. At night, the nurses heard him talking to someone, softly, patiently, as if answering questions no one else could hear. Then one morning his bed was empty, no sign of struggle. The blankets were neatly folded, the door still locked from the inside. But on the wall above his pillow, smeared in dark ash, 4 handprints, 3 small ones, and 1 larger. The forest was searched again. Helicopters, dogs, local volunteers. Nothing. No footprints, no signs of life. Only the trees, endless and silent, their trunks scarred by long, deep scratches. Weeks passed. The town began to whisper. They said the forest was cursed, that it took those who entered and left their shadows behind. Months later, a hunter found something near the old stream where the friends had camped. A torn backpack, half buried in mud. Inside it was a small camera, still intact. When the police played the footage, the first few minutes were normal. Laughter, firelight, the sound of running water. Then static. The image flickered, the sound warped. Through the distortion, a figure appeared at the edge of the firelight. Too tall to be human. Its head tilted. And behind the laughter, beneath the noise, came a voice. Low, cracked, whispering. I told you not to leave me. The video ended. The screen went black. But just before it did, one frame flashed, frozen in place. Ethan's face, staring into the camera, is black. mouth stretched into a grin that no longer looked human. The investigators replayed that final frame again and again, zooming in, enhancing, adjusting the contrast. But no matter how many times they tried, the image stayed the same, Ethan's grin frozen, his eyes dark voids that swallowed the light. A few officers claimed they saw movement in the background of that still frame, a shape behind him, shifting slightly with every replay. Others said it was only a glitch. But the technician who handled the footage swore that when he slowed it down, frame by frame, the shape blinked. After that, no one wanted to touch the tape again. The police sealed it as evidence, and the case went cold. No suspects, no remains, no answers. Just 4 names on a missing person list, and a forest that seemed to grow denser each year. People in town stopped hiking near it. Fishermen refused to go near the stream after sunset. Even animals avoided the place. No birds, no deer, not even insects. The forest had gone completely quiet. A year passed. Then, one rainy evening, a woman named Claire knocked on the ranger station door. She was Marcus's sister. Her hair was soaked, her eyes swollen from crying. She said she wanted to find her brother, to bring him home one way or another. The ranger on duty tried to stop her. He told her what had happened. He told her about the others who went searching and never returned. But she refused to listen. She said she had been dreaming of Marcus every night. In her dreams, he was calling her name from the forest. And sometimes when she woke, she could still hear his voice echoing faintly through the trees behind her house. That night she went in. She left a note at the ranger station, saying she would return by morning. She never did. When they found her car the next day, it was parked neatly at the trailhead, keys still in the ignition. Inside, on the passenger seat, was an old photograph. 4 friends smiling around a campfire. The same faces from the missing report. But something about the photo had changed. Behind them in the dark, a 5th shadow stood among the trees. No one had noticed it before. That week, the rangers sealed off the forest completely. The townspeople called it Deadwood Hollow. For years no one entered. The paths grew over, the stream turned black with silt. And the story of the 4 campers became local legend. Parents warned their children never to go near it. But legends have a way of attracting the wrong kind of curiosity. In late autumn, a group of documentary filmmakers came to town. They had heard the stories. The disappearances, the strange footage, the blackened handprints. They wanted to make a film. They were warned again and again. The townsfolk told them to leave it alone. But they laughed, saying they wanted authentic fear. So they went in, 3 of them with cameras, batteries, lights, and a generator. The forest swallowed them by noon. The mist was thick that day, curling like smoke between the trees. By sunset, the generator's hum was the only sound left. The following morning, a hiker found the generator still running beside the trail. No sign of the crew. Only a single camera lying face down in the mud. When the footage was recovered, the first hour was uneventful. Walking, joking, setting up gear. Then the mood shifted. One of them whispered that she heard breathing behind her. Another said the air suddenly smelled of iron. They turned their cameras in every direction. Nothing but trees and fog. But as they kept walking, the footage caught something strange. The trees began to twist. Not physically, but through the lens, their shapes distorted, bending inward, forming faces that seemed to stare. And then, voice. Not through the air but through the microphone. Whispering over the static. I told you not to leave me. The camera shook violently. Frames. Running. Branches snapping. And then black. When the frame returned, it was night. The camera lay on the ground, tilted upward. Someone was standing just beyond the flickering campfire. Barefoot. Ill. The light barely touched the figure's face, but the shape of it was unmistakable. It was Ethan. Older now. Or what was left of him. His skin was pale, thin as paper. His mouth hung open as if frozen mid-breath. And his eyes, empty holes, deep and wet, reflecting the fire's light. He stepped closer. The sound of his feet in the mud echoed like something heavy being dragged. He leaned down toward the camera and whispered the same words again. "I told you not to leave me." Then the image cut out. That was the last frame. Tape ended there. Authorities searched the area for weeks, but nothing was ever found. Not the crew, not their tents, not their tracks. Just the camera. And near it, burned into the soil, a fifth handprint. For a while the story faded again. The town stopped talking about it. People convinced themselves it was just rumor, just fear feeding on itself. But then 2 years later, strange things began happening around the town. Dogs barked at the forest line, refusing to cross. Faint voices were heard at night near the river. One fisherman swore he saw figures standing knee-deep in the water, unmoving, their faces turned toward him. He ran home, shaking so badly he could not speak. A week later he disappeared. His boat was found drifting in circles. And on the wooden seat, another burned handprint. The mayor of the town finally called for a full investigation. Drones, heat sensors, ground scanners, everything. The drones went in first. At first the feed was clear, just dense trees and fog. Then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., every signal went dead. When the footage was later recovered from one of the drones, the final frame showed movement below. Something crawling, not walking, between the trees. Pale shapes, 4 of them, moving in perfect unison. And in the last second before the drone crashed, the camera tilted upward, capturing what looked like a face, impossibly large, hanging among the branches. Its eyes were open, watching. After that, the forest was sealed permanently. No one was allowed within 5 miles of its border. But locals say the mist still rolls out on certain nights, thick and cold, carrying whispers that sound almost human. Some swear they can still hear footsteps just beyond the tree-line. Others say if you stand too close, you can see handprints forming slowly in the dirt at your feet, rising, burning, spreading outward like cracks. And sometimes, when the wind is still, and the forest quiets completely, you can hear it. A voice, soft but near, whispering through the trees. "I told you not to leave me." The words come closer, clearer, until it feels like they are no longer behind you, but right beside your ear. And when you turn to look, the forest is waiting, dark, open, and it feels like something just took a step closer. Behind you, low, heavy, wet. You try to breathe, but the air feels wrong. Too thick, too cold, too full of something that should not be there. Then a hand touches your shoulder, cold as the river's bottom. And before you can scream, you hear your own name whispered back to you. From a voice you know. A voice that should not exist anymore. The same voice from the tape. The same whisper that haunted the forest for years. "I told you not to leave me." And that is when you understand. The forest never took them, changed them, kept them, and now it has found someone new. Because once you have heard the voice, once it has spoken your name, the forest remembers you. Wait, and sooner or later, you will go back. The next morning the mist was still there, thicker, heavier. It crept from the forest like smoke from a dying fire, curling between fences, sliding across the empty road into town. By noon, it reached the first row of houses. The air smelled of wet soil and something else, something metallic. People shut their doors, closed their curtains. Children whispered that they saw shapes moving inside the fog. Full shapes, too thin to be human. And when the wind shifted, they heard voices, calling names that no one had spoken in years. By nightfall, the whole town was swallowed in gray. Lights flickered. The air buzzed like static. The mist carried faint sounds, footsteps on gravel, dragging chains, the faint hum of a melody that no one recognized. Inside the old ranger station, the last remaining officer sat alone. His name was Daniel. He had worked there for 30 years. He remembered when the first campers vanished. He had helped search for them, found their tents, the handprints, the camera. He was the one who named the place Deadwood Hollow. Now he sat staring at the wall of missing posters. Ethan, Lara, Marcus, Ben, Claire, the film crew, the fishermen. Their faces stared back in faded ink, eyes hollow under the flickering light. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows like hands. Daniel reached for the radio. Static. He turned the dial slowly. Every channel was filled with the same soft hiss, except one. Faint voice cut through. Whispering. Repeating. "I told you not to leave me." Daniel froze. He turned the volume down, heart hammering. He looked at the speaker, waiting. The voice came again, clearer this time. But now it said his name. Daniel. He stood up fast, knocking over his chair. The room felt colder. The light above him flickered once, twice, then went out completely. Darkness filled the room. Daniel reached for his flashlight, his breath shallow. When the beam came on, it caught something on the window. A wet handprint, slowly forming from the outside, as if pressed by something unseen. Then another. And another. They were higher now, smearing across the glass. Something was moving in the fog. Shapes. Figures. They were standing right outside. He stepped back, tripping over the chair. The flashlight fell, rolling across the floor. When he picked it up, the window was empty again. But the door was open. The fog seeped in through the gap. And in the middle of that gray curtain, a shadow stood still. Daniel raised the light. Hid a face. Or what looked like one. The skin was stretched thin, eyes black as tar, lips torn into a smile. It was Ethan. Daniel had seen his picture 100 times, but now his face looked older, wrong, almost melted. "Ethan," he whispered. The figure tilted its head. Its mouth opened, and a thick sound came out, like someone trying to speak through water. Then the voice became clear. "I told you not to leave me." Daniel stumbled backward, but the figure stepped closer. Behind it, more shapes emerged. At first, then 6, then dozens. Women. Their faces pale, blank, eyes empty. Each one with black marks running down their arms like roots. The flashlight flickered again. When it steadied, the room was full of them. They surrounded him, silent, dripping onto the floor. The air smelled like rust and earth. Daniel raised his gun with shaking hands. "Stay back," he shouted. The one that looked like Ethan stepped closer, its face inches from his. Daniel saw his own reflection in those black eyes. Small, trembling, trapped. He fired once. The sound cracked through the night. The body fell backward and burst into mist. The others did not move. Then slowly, every head turned toward him at once. Their mouths opened in unison. And they screamed. It was not a human sound. It was a tearing noise, like wind ripping through metal. The windows shattered. The lights exploded. Daniel fell to the ground, clutching his ears as blood trickled between his fingers. When he looked up, the figures were gone. Only fog remained, swirling slowly, whispering. He crawled to the corner, gasping for air. The radio crackled again. Through the static he heard it. His own voice. "I told you not to leave me." He stared at the device, trembling. The voice spoke again, louder. Then the sound changed, a scream, his scream, playing back over and over, faster each time. The fog crept closer, curling around his boots, rising to his chest, his throat. He tried to move, but it was like sinking into ice. Then silence. The next morning, the ranger station was empty. The door stood open, hinges twisted, glass shattered. But the posters were still on the wall. Except now there was a new one, pinned neatly in the center. Photo of Daniel. Below it, a handprint, burned into the paper. That was the last known record of anyone entering Deadwood Hollow. Years passed. The forest grew thicker, darker. The road that led there cracked and vanished under moss. But still, every autumn when the mist rolled in, people heard whispers in town. Some said it was the wind through the branches. Others said it was the lost calling for someone new. And sometimes, travelers passing through would see strange figures near the treeline, standing motionless, watching cars go by. They never came closer. Until one night in late October, a family driving through the old road stopped when they saw a man standing in the middle of it. He was barefoot, wearing clothes torn and stained dark. He did not move as their headlights hit him. The father rolled down the window slightly, calling out, "Are you all right?" The man turned slowly. His eyes reflected the light like two black mirrors. And then he smiled. The car's engine stalled. The lights flickered. The air turned cold enough for their breath to fog the glass. The man stepped forward, dragging one leg as though broken. The mother screamed for her husband to drive. The father twisted the key, nothing. The headlights dimmed completely. Then, through the windshield, they saw others behind him. Dozens of them. Men, women, children, all standing in the mist, their faces blank, their mouths moving in silence, until one voice rose above the rest. It was the same whisper, the same phrase. "I told you not to leave me." The engine roared to life by itself. The father slammed his foot on the pedal. The car shot forward right through the figures. But when they looked back in the rearview mirror, there was nothing, only fog. When they reached town, the mother turned to the back seat. Her daughter was gone. The door was still locked. The seatbelt still buckled. But the space was empty. And on the window beside it, a small handprint, burned into the glass. 4 months after that night, the mother said she could still hear her daughter's voice when it rained. Blows. Whispering through the walls. "I told you not to leave me." She moved away after that. But wherever she went, the fog followed. Every house, every town, the same whisper, the same smell of wet earth and iron. Until one morning she did not show up for work. Her neighbors said her house was locked from the inside. But there was a trail of muddy footprints leading from the back door into the woods behind her property. And the trees there, no one remembered seeing them before. They said it was as if a piece of forest had grown overnight. Twisted, black, still dripping with mist. When police entered the house, everything was quiet. Her shoes stood neatly by the door. Her coffee cup was still warm. And on the kitchen wall, written in ash, were the words, "I told you not to leave me." Below it a single handprint, larger than hers. They followed the footprints into the woods. The air was heavy, silent. The deeper they went, the darker it became. Then they heard it. A voice, faint but near. Not just one, many. Whispering from all directions. The officers froze. And for a moment the fog seemed to move toward them, breathing. One officer swore he saw faces inside it. Others said they heard laughter. And then, from behind them, came the sound of footsteps. Low. Bragging. But when they turned, no one was there. But on the ground, between their boots, new handprints appeared. Forming, smoking, burning into the soil. The youngest officer broke first. He ran. The others followed. None of them spoke about what they saw. They quit the force within the month. Deadwood Hollow was never mentioned again. The road to it vanished from every map. The ranger station rotted away, swallowed by vines. But sometimes, on nights when fog rolls low across the valley, truckers passing through say their radios catch a faint signal. A voice whispering softly through the static. "I told you not to leave me." And if they listen too long, they hear another voice join in. And another. And another. Until it sounds like 100 voices speaking at once. Crying. Begging. Calling for someone who left them behind. The mist always thickens after that. And the road behind them disappears. No headlights. No map. Just the forest waiting. Tall, black, and endless. And somewhere deep inside it something is listening. Waiting for another name to call. Another voice to answer. Another soul to keep. Because once you hear it, once you really hear it, you never come back alone. Final episode, The Forest Remembers. The fog had not lifted for 3 days. The town lay silent under a heavy gray sky. Its streets empty, its lights dim. No one spoke of the disappearances anymore. They had learned that the forest listened. And when you spoke its name, it remembered you. At the edge of town, a single figure walked the cracked road leading toward Deadwood Hollow. A priest, old and thin, his collar dark with rain. Father Alden had come from far away, a man who no longer believed in miracles, but still hoped to quiet restless souls. He carried only a cross, a lantern, and a worn leather book. The mist curled around his feet like smoke as he entered the forest. The trees rose like cathedral pillars, their bark blackened, their roots clawing through the earth. Every step echoed as if the ground beneath him was hollow. The air grew colder, thick with the scent of rot and iron. He prayed under his breath, voice trembling, words breaking apart in the wind. Somewhere ahead he heard a soft sound, weeping. He followed it through the fog until he reached the stream. The water was dark, unmoving, and on the opposite bank stood the figures. Dozens of them. Men, women, children, pale and silent, their faces smooth as wax. They stood shoulder to shoulder, watching him. He lifted the cross, his voice rising stronger now. He spoke words of release, of forgiveness, of peace. But as he prayed, their heads tilted slowly in unison. Their mouths opened. And from every throat came the same whisper. "I told you not to leave me." The sound rippled through the fog, low and deep, vibrating in the air. The priest stepped back, clutching the cross tighter. He could see their faces clearly now. Ethan, Laura, Marcus, even Daniel. Their eyes were hollow, black as the water behind them. They began to walk forward, across the surface of the stream, not sinking, not making a sound. The priest dropped to his knees, praying louder, the lantern trembling in his hand. The light flickered, then died. The forest swallowed everything. And when the fog finally began to fade with dawn, there was nothing left. Only the cross, half buried in the mud beside the stream. The townspeople found it days later, still wet, still warm to the touch. No one ever went near Deadwood Hollow again. The forest grew quiet once more, its mist retreating to the valley, its roots deep in the earth. But on some nights, when the moon is thin and the air smells of rain, you can still hear it from the hills. A whisper carried by the wind. Gentle, patient. I told you not to leave me. And if you listen too long, you will start to hear your own name next. Because the forest never forgets. Only waits. And now it remembers you.